Hi, welcome to my channel. This is gonna be the round 1 series recap of the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs, specifically focusing on the Western Conference. So to start it off, the Vegas Golden Knights were the first team to punch their ticket into the second round after they beat the Minnesota Wild in 6 games. They go into the second round with a 4-2 series lead. And with this matchup, the Vegas Golden Knights were actually outscored by the Minnesota Wild, 19 goals versus 18 goals, just slightly outscored. However, the Vegas Golden Knights goaltending was what ultimately helped them to be able to beat the Knights in the end, as well as being able to capitalize on their scoring chances, as they were able to outshot the Minnesota Wild 192 shots versus 153 shots. And this series was pretty interesting because we saw the Minnesota Wild outscoring, playing a more physical game, and also their goaltending wasn't that far off compared to the Vegas Golden Knights. However, overall, the Vegas Golden Knights power play at being able to capitalize on their scoring chances and their face-off wins, power play, etc. was what ultimately helped them give the edge to making it into the second round. The second series, which ended within the first round, was between the Edmonton Oilers and LA Kings. The Oilers won this series 4-2 in 6 games played, and after winning this series, we're going to be seeing the Edmonton Oilers play against the Vegas Golden Knights in the second round, but we'll get into that more later on in the video. But just focusing on this specific series, we saw that the Edmonton Oilers really did find themselves having the advantage compared to the LA Kings. In regards to they scored more goals compared to the Kings. They were able to maintain puck possession more with the amount of shots that they had compared to the Kings, 187 shots to 2 shots, that comparison. And they were pretty relatively even in regards to their physicality, as the Edmonton Oilers ended with 234 hits versus the Kings 230 hits. The Kings did have a better average face-off within the 6 games that were played. They had a 54.53% versus the Oilers 45.52%. However, the Oilers did find more success on the power play with 44% compared to the Kings 39%. When it came down to goaltending, they were both, I would say, relatively similar too. This series really came down also to this. It really did come down to who was able to capitalize on their scoring chances as well. Mainly, as we saw, the Kings would tend to lay back within the last few games that they lost, and unfortunately, because they did lay back a little bit, it gave the Edmonton Oilers a chance to be able to make their comebacks and ultimately win their games, as the Kings won games 1 and 2 this series, but then lost the remainder of the series, unfortunately. Even though Kemper did make so many impressive saves, it was just who was able to capitalize more on their chances. The third game that ended within this for the first round of the Western Conference was a series between the Dallas Stars versus the Colorado Avalanche. The Stars won this series 4-3 in 7 games, and this was the first matchup within the first round of the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs to make it to Game 7. So, despite the Colorado Avalanche outshooting, and also playing a way more physical game compared to the Stars again were very similar to what happened with the Kings game, where the Stars would make a great comeback within the last final minutes of the game, and they would either win in overtime or just barely score enough goals before the end of regulation when the Avs are trying to make their comeback, right? So, unfortunately for the Avs, especially in Game 7, they just weren't able to generate any any goal scoring. They had a couple great chances too, but it just wasn't enough, especially pulling their goaltender to have that man advantage in Game 7. It just wasn't enough to overcome the Dallas Stars' momentum. And yeah, stats-wise, you would think that the Avs were going to be the one with the upper hand. However, it just did not work out for them in their favor. Especially with Mikko Rantanen being the one that helps the Stars make it to Game 7, but we won't get into that one too much. We're not going to get into that too much. Especially with time crunch. Anyways, Winnipeg Jets and St. Louis Blues series was the one that wrapped up the first round for the Western Conference, and the Jets won this series 4-3 within 7 games played, and they were able to punch their ticket into the second round and are scheduled to play against the Dallas Stars after their second overtime win when Captain Adam Laurie was the one who scored the game-winning goal in the second overtime. And yeah, that one was pretty intense, especially after Game 7 specifically. The Blues had that lead, and then they lost it within the last 2 minutes of regulation, especially with the game-tying goal being scored, I believe, 1.6 seconds left in the period. Intense, crazy, and after a scoreless first overtime, the Jets being able to maintain that puck possession throughout overtime really helped them to maintain their momentum going into second overtime to be able to score that game-winning goal. Anyways, back to this overall stats within the 7 games played. The Blues were able to outscore the Jets 27 goals versus 21 goals, and they found more success on their face-off wins and overall goaltending, as Binnington was able to have a higher save percentage compared to Hellebuyck. However, the Jets being able to maintain that puck possession, keep maintaining their physicality throughout the game, and also finding way more success on the power play really did benefit them. And just adding on playing on their home ice, having that fan interaction electricity for their home games really did help them to win the series overall, because Hellebuyck did play a lot better, at least goaltending wise, stats wise. He was able to win the games for the Jets when on home ice. Blues, Jordan Binnington was able to win when they played on their home ice. Of course, the Jets had home ice advantage, so yeah. Put one thing with another, you see the Jets be able to feed off that energy from the fans and put it into their play and ultimately win. Which I believe that was also what happened with the Avs versus the Stars. If you take away Game 1, because Game 1 the Stars lost on their home ice. After that, the Avs were able to win when they mostly played on home ice, especially in that game to be able to force Game 7 at the Stars home ice. The Avs played such an electric game, and they were hoping to keep that momentum going, but unfortunately did not work in their favor. And that's basically a quick rendition of my thoughts and views, a recap for the first round. You can find a way more detailed analysis on my blog that will be linked down below, and you can read those game recaps to get a more in-depth focused explanations. Now we're going to be giving a little quick rundown about what to expect for the second round between these two matchups. So the first matchup that actually starts today is actually between today, May 6, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. is between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. During the regular season, when they played against one another, they actually were evenly tied 2-2 in the amount of wins against one another. They were overall very similar statistically, where the Edmonton Oilers outscored the Knights by only like 1 goal, 11 versus 10. The Vegas Golden Knights slightly outshot the Oilers 115 versus 111. The Edmonton Oilers, however, played a way more physical game compared to the Knights, 89 hits versus 66 hits, and Oilers did find way more success on their face-off wins and their average power play percentage. They also found their overall goaltending did find more success in like how many shots on goals were saved, such as their goaltending tandem being able to save 105 shots out of 115 shots, which contributed to their 0.913 save percentage. And then the Vegas Golden Knights saved 100 out of 111 shots on goal, which contributed to their 0.900 save percentage. Now looking at the Jets versus the Stars, the Jets quite literally dominated the Stars during the regular season. They won 3 out of 4 games that were played. They were able to outscore them despite the Stars outshooting the Jets. The Jets played a way more physical game with having 128 hits versus 80 hits. The Stars struggled with their face-off wins and especially struggled on their power play percentage compared to the Jets within the 4 games played against one another. The Jets goaltending had a significantly higher save percentage when their goaltending tandem saved 108 shots on goal versus out of 100. They saved 108 shots out of 114 shots on goal compared to the Stars goaltending tandem saving 96 out of 109 shots on goal, which contributed to their 0.881 save percentage overall within the 4 games played. So we can expect this series between the Jets and the Stars to most likely lean on the Jets if they can keep feeding off of their home ice advantage. But then again, we never know because technically the Avs did have a higher statistically higher stats. Whatever the word's supposed to be. Sorry. The Avs just had higher stats compared to the Stars overall, but the Stars were able to push through, persevere, and win that game. So we'll see what happens between this series. So here is the schedule for the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Edmonton Oilers in the second round. Game 1 starts today at 6:30 p.m. PST. So if you have any of the networks that are listed under watch, feel free to watch it. If not, you can always go to my blog and read about the game recap, which will be posted within the hour of the game ending. And here is schedule for the Winnipeg Jets versus the Dallas Stars in the second round. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!